In the heart of Ravenport City, where glass towers cut into the clouds and power lived behind tinted windows, everyone knew one name, even if they never dared say it out loud. Quick pause, if you're enjoying this story. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter. Let's continue. Dominic Cross. To the public, he was a reclusive billionaire investor, the man behind shipping empires, private security firms, and discreet offshore funds. To those who truly understood how the city worked, Dominic Cross was something else entirely. He was the shadow that decided who rose and who disappeared. Dominic lived in a fortress disguised as a mansion on the northern cliffs of Ravencroft Heights. Armed gates, private guards, silence so heavy it felt intentional. Inside those walls, nothing happened without his knowledge. Nothing, except one thing he could not control. His son. The baby's name was Eli Cross, barely 8 months old, with sharp gray eyes that seemed far too aware for a child his age. Since the night Eli was born, Dominic's world had narrowed in ways no enemy ever managed to do. The baby rejected everyone. It started with the first nanny, a highly recommended professional flown in from Europe. Within minutes of holding Eli, the baby screamed until his face turned red, tiny fists swinging violently. The nanny tried soothing techniques, soft music, toys. Nothing worked. She quit the same day. Then came another, and another, and another. Elite caregivers, medical nannies, women with decades of experience raising powerful families' children. Each one lasted hours at most. Eli kicked, scratched, cried uncontrollably, refusing food, refusing sleep, until they left. The staff was terrified. Some whispered that the baby could sense fear. Others believed something darker, that Eli carried his father's temperament, sharp and unyielding even in infancy. Dominic didn't believe in superstition, but he believed in patterns. And this one disturbed him. Late one evening, Dominic stood behind the one-way glass of the nursery observation room, watching another nanny attempt to calm Eli. The woman bounced him gently, murmuring reassurances. Eli responded by screaming louder, his small body stiff with rejection. Finally, she lowered him into the crib, hands shaking. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cross," she said through tears. "I can't do this." Dominic didn't respond. He only nodded. She left the mansion an hour later with a severance package worth more than most people earned in years. Still, the problem remained. That night, Dominic sat alone in his private study, the city lights flickering far below the cliffs. A glass of untouched whiskey rested on the desk. Across from him stood Victor Hale, his longtime security chief. "This is the last one," Victor said carefully. "No professional nanny in the city will take the job anymore." Words spread. Dominic's jaw tightened. Money didn't change that. Victor hesitated. "Not even when we tripled the offer." Silence fell between them. Then Victor spoke again. "There is one option left." Dominic lifted his eyes. "Say it." "A maid," Victor said. "Her name is Mara Lane. She works part-time cleaning staff for a catering company that services Lower Ravencroft. No child care background. No recommendations beyond basic employment." Dominic let out a slow breath. "You're suggesting I put my son in the hands of a stranger with no experience?" Victor nodded. "Yes. Because she's the only person who didn't apply for the money." That caught Dominic's attention. Victor continued. "She refused the nanny position twice. Said she wasn't qualified. Said she only needed cleaning work." Dominic leaned back slightly. "Then why mention her at all?" "Because," Victor said, "she was the only person Eli didn't cry around." Dominic froze. Victor explained. 2 days ago, during the fundraiser cleanup, she was assigned to the East Wing. Eli was there with one of the nannies at the time. The nanny stepped away briefly. Mara didn't touch the child. She didn't speak loudly. She just sat on the floor nearby, cleaning quietly. "And?" Dominic asked. "And Eli stopped crying." The room felt suddenly colder. Dominic stood. Bring her. Mara Lane arrived the next morning wearing simple clothes and nervous determination. She stood in the massive foyer of the Cross mansion, hands clasped, eyes lowered, not out of fear, but respect. She had no idea who Dominic Cross truly was. To her, he was just a wealthy man with tired eyes. "I want to be clear," Dominic said calmly. "You are not a nanny. You will not be paid like one. You can leave at any moment." Mara nodded. "I understand. You will not force my son to like you." "I wouldn't," she replied softly. Dominic studied her for a long moment. "Why are you here?" Mara hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because sometimes babies don't need professionals. They need someone who isn't trying to control them." Dominic didn't react. He motioned toward the nursery. Inside, Eli sat in his crib, eyes alert, watching everything. Mara approached slowly. She didn't smile exaggeratedly. She didn't reach out. She simply sat on the floor beside the crib and began folding a small blanket quietly. For the first time in months, Eli didn't cry. He leaned forward, tiny fingers gripping the crib rails, studying her. Then, without warning, he giggled. The sound echoed through the nursery like something forbidden. Dominic Cross felt something in his chest shift, something unfamiliar and deeply unsettling. And he knew, in that moment, that the balance inside his fortress had just changed. By the third day, the mansion felt different. Not louder. Not warmer. Just unsettled. Word spread quickly among the staff of the Cross estate. Guards whispered it during shift changes. Housekeepers exchanged glances in hallways. The unspoken truth hung in the air like static. The baby was calm. Eli Cross, the child who had reduced elite nannies to tears and resignation letters, now slept through the night. He ate without resistance. He laughed, soft, breathy sounds that no one remembered hearing before. And the reason was a poor maid who refused to act like she belonged. Mara Lane followed the same routine every day. She arrived early, dressed simply, hair tied back, no makeup, no attempt to impress. She didn't linger in rooms she wasn't assigned to. She didn't ask questions about the mansion or its owner. She just worked. When it came time to be near Eli, she never rushed him. She didn't scoop him up the way the nannies did. She sat on the floor, sometimes humming quietly, sometimes folding laundry, sometimes doing nothing at all. Eli chose her. That terrified everyone. On the fourth morning, Dominic Cross watched from the hallway as Mara sat beside the crib, back against the wall, knees drawn close. Eli crawled toward the edge of the mattress, peering down at her like she was something rare. She looked up and smiled, not wide, not forced. Eli leaned forward and kissed her cheek. Dominic froze. He had negotiated with criminals, stared down enemies with guns, watched men beg for mercy. None of it had shaken him like this. Victor Hale stood beside him, arms crossed. "That's the first time he's done that," he said quietly. Dominic didn't answer. He turned and walked away. Later that day, Dominic summoned Mara to the study. The room was designed to intimidate. Dark wood walls, heavy furniture, city skyline stretching endlessly beyond floor-to-ceiling glass. Most people shrank the moment they entered. Mara didn't. She stood near the door, hands folded loosely, posture calm. "Sit," Dominic said. She shook her head gently. "I'm fine standing." Another rule broken. Dominic studied her carefully. "You understand where you are, don't you?" "Yes," she replied. "In your home. You don't seem afraid." "I don't think fear helps babies," she said honestly. "Or adults." The corner of Dominic's jaw tightened. "You've been here less than a week," he said. "Yet my son responds to you like he's known you his whole life." "Why?" Mara hesitated, choosing her words. "Because I don't want anything from him." Silence followed. Dominic leaned forward. "Everyone wants something." She met his eyes for the first time. "Not from a child." The words landed heavier than any threat ever had. "You don't know who I am," Dominic said slowly. "I know who you are to your son," Mara replied. "You're the man he watches from across the room." The voice he hears late at night. The arms he doesn't get held in very often. That was a dangerous thing to say. Victor shifted slightly, ready to intervene. Dominic raised a hand. "You're overstepping," Dominic said. "Yes," Mara agreed. "But you asked." Another pause. Finally, Dominic spoke again. "You will stay." Mara nodded. "As long as he needs me. You'll be paid more." She shook her head. "Pay me what you promised. Nothing more." Dominic stared at her like she was speaking a language he'd forgotten existed. "Why?" he asked. "Because if you turn me into something expensive," she said softly, "he'll feel it." Dominic said nothing. She left the room moments later. And for the first time in years, Dominic Cross sat alone, and questioned himself. The changes in Eli were undeniable. He reached for Mara when she entered rooms. He crawled toward her voice. When she wasn't present, he waited, eyes searching doorways, body restless but not angry. Dominic began altering his schedule. Meetings were rescheduled. Flights delayed. Deals delegated. Not because of business. Because he wanted to observe. One evening, he entered the nursery quietly. Mara sat on the floor, Eli in her lap, reading from a worn children's book. Her voice was soft, uneven in places, like someone who rarely read out loud. Eli listened, fingers gripping her sleeve. Dominic stood there longer than he intended. When the story ended, Eli turned and noticed him. The baby didn't cry. He looked at Dominic, then back at Mara. Dominic took a step forward. Eli hesitated. Mara shifted slightly, giving space without pulling away. "It's okay," she murmured. "That's your father." The word felt foreign in Dominic's chest. He knelt slowly. Eli studied him. Then, tentatively, reached out. Dominic froze. Tiny fingers brushed his knuckle. Something inside Dominic cracked, quietly, painfully. He stood abruptly and left the room without a word. Mara watched the door close, concern flickering across her face. That night, the mansion buzzed with tension. Several senior staff members confronted Victor privately. "She's changing him," one whispered. "This isn't normal," another said. "People like us don't change." Victor listened, expression unreadable. When Dominic finally retired to his private quarters, Victor followed. "You're letting her get close," Victor said carefully. "She's good for him," Dominic replied. "And dangerous for you." Dominic didn't deny it. "She doesn't belong here," Victor pressed. "Neither do I," Dominic said quietly. That ended the conversation. The next morning, something went wrong. Mara arrived later than usual. Eli cried. Not violently, not angrily, but quietly. The sound echoed down the halls, pulling at something deep inside Dominic's chest. He entered the nursery himself, lifting Eli awkwardly, unsure of what to do. The crying didn't stop. Minutes passed. Then footsteps. Mara rushed in, breathless. "I'm sorry," she said. "The bus." Eli reached for her immediately. Dominic handed the child over without thinking. The crying stopped. The room fell silent. Dominic stared at the empty space in his arms. And for the first time, fear crept in. Not fear of enemies. Not fear of loss. But fear of dependence. Because if something happened to Mara Lane, Dominic Cross didn't know what would happen to his son. Or to himself. Ravenport City had a way of sensing shifts in power before headlines ever did. A delayed meeting here. A missed gala there. A billionaire who once moved like clockwork suddenly canceling appearances without explanation. People noticed. They always did. And when people noticed Dominic Cross, rumors didn't stay rumors for long. By the second week Mara Lane worked inside the Cliffside mansion, the change in Eli was no longer a secret the staff could hide. Guards watched the baby laugh from the nursery doorway like they were witnessing a ghost. Housekeepers lingered longer than necessary just to hear it again, small, soft sounds of happiness that had never belonged in this house. But not everyone was comforted by it. Some were threatened. Because the Cross estate didn't run on warmth or trust. It ran on rules. Silence. Fear. The idea that Dominic Cross was untouchable. And now there was something in his home that didn't fear him. A maid. One morning, Mara found her supply closet unlocked and emptied. Cleaning solutions gone. Linen inventory disturbed. A small, cruel message scrawled on the inside of the door in black marker. "Leave before you're buried here." Mara stared at it without moving, her heart pounding once, hard, then settling into a steady rhythm again. She wiped the message off with a wet cloth, slowly, carefully, as if cleaning up a spill. When the door was spotless, she returned to her work. But she didn't forget. That afternoon, Victor Hale confronted the staff in the service corridor, voice cold enough to freeze the air. "Someone thinks they can make decisions in this house," he said, eyes sweeping across faces. "Let me be clear. Only one person makes decisions here." No one answered. No one blinked. Victor's gaze sharpened. "If it happens again, you won't be fired. You'll be gone." The hall emptied quickly after that. Still, Dominic Cross said nothing about it. Not directly. Yet somehow, the supply closet was restocked within an hour, better stocked than before. Mara noticed. She didn't thank anyone. She simply kept working. The first real threat came on a rainy night. A black SUV sat too long at the bottom of the cliff road, headlights off, engine running. The guards saw it on camera feeds and assumed it was a lost driver, until the vehicle didn't move for 2 hours. Victor increased patrols, but Dominic didn't react the way Victor expected. He only asked one question. "Was Mara seen outside?" "No," Victor said. "She hasn't left the property." Dominic's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then it isn't about her." Victor hesitated. "It might be." Dominic's voice stayed calm. "Everything becomes about what you can't control." That was when Victor understood. Dominic wasn't only protecting Mara. He was protecting the part of himself she was awakening. 2 nights later, Mara was in the nursery, rocking Eli to sleep. The baby's warm cheek pressed against her collarbone, his tiny fist curled into her shirt like he was anchoring himself to the only safety he recognized. The mansion was quiet. Too quiet. Mara noticed it first, not as fear, but as instinct. The hallway outside the nursery went still, like even the air had stopped moving. She rose gently, laying Eli into the crib. He stirred, then settled. She stepped toward the door. And froze. A man stood in the corridor, dressed like staff, but wrong in the eyes. Wrong in the posture. He held a maintenance bag, face lowered beneath a cap. Mara didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply raised her voice, not loud, but clear. "Victor." The man's head snapped up. His eyes were sharp and empty. He moved fast, pulling something from the bag. Mara slammed the nursery door and twisted the lock. Eli startled and began to whimper. The handle rattled violently. Mara pressed her body against the door, heart steady, voice calm. "Shoo," she whispered to Eli, even as her hands trembled. "I'm here." The door shuddered again. Then footsteps thundered. Victor and 2 guards surged into the corridor, weapons drawn. The intruder spun and ran, straight into a 3rd guard coming from the stairwell. The man was tackled hard, crashing into the wall. Eli began to cry louder now. Mara scooped him up instantly, rocking him, murmuring reassurance. Her eyes stayed on the hallway through the cracked door. Dominic arrived seconds later. Not rushed. Not panicked. But the atmosphere around him shifted as if gravity itself had changed. He stared at the intruder pinned to the floor, then at Mara holding Eli, then at the lock on the nursery door. Dominic's face didn't show anger. It showed decision. "Who sent you?" Victor barked. The man spat blood and laughed. "You think I'll say it?" Dominic crouched in front of him, voice quiet. "You came into my home." The intruder's laughter faltered. Dominic continued, calm as ice. "You came near my son." The man swallowed, suddenly aware of the mistake he'd made. Dominic stood. He looked at Victor. "Remove him." Victor nodded. "And the SUV?" Dominic's eyes lifted toward the window, where the rain streaked down like tears on glass. "Find out who's watching," he said. Mara held Eli tighter. Dominic turned toward her. For a moment, the entire hallway waited, guards, staff, even Victor, expecting Dominic Cross to say something cold, something transactional. Instead, he asked softly, "Are you hurt?" Mara blinked once. "No." Eli clutched her shirt. Dominic stared at the baby's grip, then back at Mara. "You protected him," Dominic said, like he was naming something sacred. Mara's voice stayed gentle. "I couldn't do anything else." Dominic stepped closer. "You could have screamed." Mara met his eyes. "Then he would have been afraid." Dominic's expression tightened, not with anger, but with something like guilt. "Go to your room," Victor said. "Stay there tonight." Mara hesitated. Dominic spoke instead. "No." Everyone turned toward him. Dominic's voice dropped. "She stays where Eli is. No one separates them." Victor's jaw flexed. "Dominic." "I said no." That was the end of it. Later that night, Dominic sat in the nursery chair, elbows on his knees, staring at Eli sleeping peacefully in the crib. Mara sat across from him on the floor, legs tucked to the side, keeping the room calm just by being there. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally Dominic said, "You should be afraid." Mara's answer was quiet. "I am." Dominic looked up sharply. Mara continued, eyes lowered. "Not of you. Of what happens to a child raised without gentleness." The words hit Dominic like a punch he couldn't block. He stood and walked toward the crib, watching Eli's small chest rise and fall. "I built this house to keep enemies out," he said. Mara's voice softened. "And it kept love out too." Dominic's hands curled into fists, not from rage, from conflict. Then, as if the universe wanted to test him, Victor entered quietly. "We identified the intruder," Victor said. "He's connected to the Marrow Syndicate. Their leader, Caspian Rowe, has been waiting for a weakness." Dominic didn't move. "So now they think my son is the weakness." Victor nodded. "And the maid is the doorway." Mara's stomach tightened. Dominic turned slowly, gaze settling on her. For the first time, Mara saw something raw behind his control. Not just fear for Eli. Fear that his world would destroy the one person who made Eli safe. Dominic's voice came out low. "They won't touch you." Victor hesitated. "Dominic, if she stays, they'll keep coming." Dominic stared at Mara, then at Eli. And in that moment, the billionaire Mafia boss, who had always chosen power over everything, faced a choice he'd never trained for. Send Mara away to keep her alive, or keep her close and risk war. Dominic's jaw set. He looked at Victor. "Prepare the house," he said. "Tonight, we stop being watched." Ravenport City woke the next morning unaware that a war had been stopped before it ever reached the streets. Inside the Cross Estate, the air was sharp with preparation. Guards rotated silently through hallways. Surveillance screens glowed with live feeds from every road leading up the cliffs. Dominic Cross stood at the center of it all, composed as ever, but something about him had changed. This time, the fortress wasn't being fortified to protect power. It was being fortified to protect a child. And the woman holding that child. Mara woke before dawn to find Victor waiting outside her door. His expression was unreadable. "You're moving rooms," he said. Her stomach tightened. "Why?" Victor glanced toward the nursery. "Because the safest place in this house is wherever Eli is. And from now on, that place is under direct guard." Mara didn't argue. She only nodded and followed him. When Dominic entered the nursery an hour later, he found Mara sitting on the floor with Eli, stacking soft blocks and knocking them over again, eliciting quiet giggles. The sound still startled him, still felt unreal. "Caspian Rowe made contact," Victor said from behind him. Dominic didn't turn. "When?" 10 minutes ago. "He wants a meeting. Public. Neutral ground." Mara's hands stilled. Dominic finally looked at her. "You don't need to listen." "I want to," she said. Victor frowned. "This isn't a conversation." Dominic raised a hand. "She stays." Victor exhaled slowly. "Rowe's conditions are simple. He claims the Cross Empire has grown soft. He wants proof it hasn't." "And the proof?" Dominic said, already knowing. Victor nodded. He wants the maid removed. Permanently. He believes she's leverage. The room went quiet. Mara's breath caught for half a second, then steadied. Dominic looked at Eli, then back at Victor. Tell him yes to the meeting. Victor stiffened. Dominic. I said yes. The meeting took place at dusk, on the terrace of a private high-rise overlooking Ravencroft Harbor. Glass walls. Neutral territory. Armed guards kept at a distance, weapons visible but lowered. Caspian Rowe arrived smiling. He was younger than Dominic, leaner, dressed like a man who enjoyed provoking reactions. His eyes flicked immediately to Mara standing behind Dominic, Eli asleep against her shoulder. So that's her, Caspian said lightly. The miracle maid. Dominic didn't respond. Caspian chuckled. Relax. I didn't bring a sniper. Today's about clarity. You invaded my home, Dominic said calmly. You let someone into it, Caspian countered. That's different. Mara shifted slightly. Dominic noticed instantly. Caspian's smile widened. See? That right there. You feel it, don't you? The weakness. Dominic took a step forward. Say what you came to say. Caspian leaned against the railing. Fine. You remove her from your life. Publicly. Send her away. No money. No protection. And I walk away. And if I don't... Caspian's eyes flicked to Eli. Then the city learns you bleed. Mara's arms tightened around the child. Dominic's voice dropped. You threaten my son again, and you won't leave this terrace. Caspian shrugged. Then prove I'm wrong. Prove you're still who you were. Silence stretched. Then Dominic did something no one expected. He turned to Mara. Will you step forward? He asked gently. Mara obeyed, heart pounding. Dominic placed a hand on Eli's back, steady and protective. Then he looked at Caspian Rowe and spoke clearly, loudly, so every guard, every watcher, every hidden camera could hear. You think she's leverage, Dominic said. You're wrong. Caspian smirked. Then let her go. Dominic shook his head once. She's not leverage. She's family. The word hit like thunder. Victor's eyes widened. Guards stiffened. Caspian's smile faltered for the first time. Dominic continued, voice unwavering. You wanted proof I haven't gone soft. Here it is. He turned fully toward Caspian. I built my empire on fear, Dominic said. And it made me powerful. But it also made me blind. Mara's breath caught. My son didn't need fear. He needed gentleness. And when my world tried to crush that, I chose it anyway. Caspian's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. Dominic smiled faintly. No. I'm ending yours. Victor stepped forward. Now. Lights flared across the harbor. Police sirens echoed below. Screens around the terrace flickered to life, displaying frozen accounts, seized assets, intercepted communications. Caspian spun. What is this? Dominic's voice was ice. While you were watching my home, I was watching yours. Caspian's face drained of color. Your syndicate is finished, Dominic said. And you will never come near my son. Or her. Security moved in fast. Caspian was escorted away, shouting threats that dissolved into the night. The terrace went still. Dominic turned to Mara. For the first time since she'd met him, his voice wasn't guarded. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You should never have been placed in danger. Mara looked down at Eli, then back at Dominic. You didn't place me there. You chose him. Dominic nodded once. And I'll keep choosing him. Weeks later, Ravencroft Heights felt lighter. The Cross Estate changed, not dramatically, but meaningfully. Dominic was seen more, heard more. Eli was held more. Mara was offered contracts, protection, wealth beyond imagination. She accepted only one thing: a place to stay. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Dominic sat on the nursery floor beside Mara, watching Eli crawl clumsily between them. He smiles more now, Dominic said. He feels safe, Mara replied. Dominic watched his son reach out and grab his finger. This time, Dominic didn't freeze. He smiled. The billionaire Mafia boss who ruled a city through fear had learned something no enemy ever taught him. That the strongest empire he would ever build was the one that protected innocence. And it began with a baby who chose a poor maid over the richest power in the room.